My younger sister stole our family's entire life savings to run away with a man she barely knew, and it destroyed all of us. My father died of a heart attack that same day. My mother followed him soon after, unable to survive the grief. Before she passed, she begged me to find my sister. I did, but by then, my sister was already dead, killed in a car crash while fleeing in a stolen vehicle. I cremated her myself. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Afterward, a wealthy young man appeared in my life, claiming he had fallen in love with me at first sight. He courted me intensely, married me, and then locked me in a basement and murdered me without mercy. As I lay dying, he told me the truth. The man my sister ran away with was him. He blamed me for my sister's death, for ruining his chance to be recognized by his powerful father. That was how my life ended. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the past, back to the night before everything fell apart. My sister Chloe was tossing and turning beside me in the dark. We had shared a bedroom our whole lives. We came from an ordinary family. Chloe had always been quiet, well-behaved, and top of her class. To our parents and every relative, she was the perfect daughter. Because of that, no one noticed when she started to change. In the silence of the night, I could hear her sighing again and again, unable to sleep. "Chloe," I whispered. She froze instantly. "Why are you still awake? Is something bothering you?" I checked my phone under the blanket. It was the 19th. I remembered this date all too well. Tomorrow was her 18th birthday and the day she would steal our parents' bank card and disappear. After a long pause, Chloe turned to face me. Her eyes were bright, excited, and she smiled without even trying to hide it. "Sis," she asked softly, "did anyone ever chase after you when you were in school?" My fingers tightened around the blanket. Did she have any idea that this single reckless decision would wipe out our entire family? I sat up and looked straight at her. "It doesn't matter whether anyone liked me. What matters is studying and getting into college. You're about to take your entrance exams. I hope you're not thinking about doing anything stupid." My voice was calm, but inside I wanted to shake her awake. Chloe stared at me for a moment, then pouted and turned away. "Okay. I get it." She didn't fall asleep until dawn. I got out of bed the moment the sun came up. I wanted to report the bank card as lost, but I couldn't explain why to my parents yet. After thinking it through, I used my mother's phone to transfer several small amounts of money to my own account. A few minutes later, the notification came through. The card had been frozen for suspicious activity. Chloe was completely blinded by romance. I didn't expect a warning to stop her, but I couldn't risk my parents' lives. The money had to be secured first. When Chloe woke up, she ate breakfast in silence, then started pacing around the room. Watching her restless movements made my heart sink. I already knew I couldn't change her mind. All I could do was protect the people who didn't deserve to die. Less than half an hour later, just like before, she left the apartment. I opened the drawer in my parents' bedroom. The bank card was gone. From the balcony, I saw a young man on a motorcycle waiting downstairs. Chloe ran straight to him. The engine roared, and they sped away from the neighborhood without looking back. I gripped the railing until my hands hurt. The man she ran away with was named Ethan, an illegitimate son of a wealthy family, known for hanging around bars and troublemakers. In my last life, Chloe learned our parents died because of her choice, and she didn't feel a thing. I was the one who paid the price later. This time, I wasn't going to chase after her. I just wanted to see how far her fantasy would really take her. To keep history from repeating itself, I had already prepared my father's heart medication. Before my parents noticed anything was wrong, I spoke up first. "Mom, Dad, where's Chloe? It's her birthday today. I bought a cake. She's been out all day, will she be home for dinner?" At first, they weren't worried. But by 9 that night, Chloe's phone was still unreachable. Panic set in. I added quietly, "I saw Chloe searching through your bedroom this morning. She seemed like she was looking for something." My parents rushed to the drawer. The bank card. I stayed close to my father, watching his face carefully. "Chloe isn't home, and the card is gone. She wouldn't have taken the money, would she? That's everything we've saved." His hand flew to his chest. I reacted immediately. "Dad, Mom, I forgot to tell you I tried transferring some money from your card last night and messed up the password. The bank froze it." I slowed my voice, guiding them through the fear. "If the card is frozen, no one can take the money, right?" Yes, yes, my mother said, clapping her hands in relief. "If it's frozen, the money's safe." "But where is Chloe?" My father's color improved slightly. I forced a smile. "I'll call her classmates." None of them knew where she was. 2 days later, we reported her missing. Security footage showed Chloe leaving with a man on a motorcycle. "She looked like such a good kid," the guard said. "You really never know." My father collapsed into a chair, clutching his chest. I gave him his medication immediately, and with the police escorting us, we rushed to the hospital. Because we acted fast, he survived. My mother aged years in a matter of days, but they were both alive. This time, I had saved them. After my father was discharged from the hospital, I finally did what I hadn't dared to do in my previous life. I followed my sister without trying to save her. With everything I remembered, finding Chloe was painfully easy. Ethan never stayed anywhere decent. He floated between bars, underground clubs, and places filled with loud music and people who lived day to day without thinking about consequences. I dressed plainly, tied my hair back, and walked into one of the bars he frequented, forcing myself to blend into the shadows. The moment I spotted them, my chest tightened. Chloe stood beside him like a misplaced decoration, wearing clothes she clearly wasn't used to, copying movements she didn't understand, smiling too carefully, as if afraid she'd do something wrong. She used to flinch at loud noises, used to complain when the TV volume was too high. Now she was surrounded by chaos and pretending she belonged. Ethan treated her like an accessory, touching her casually, showing her off to his friends as proof that he had someone young and obedient following him. When the men around him laughed, Chloe laughed too, always half a second late, her eyes darting around nervously. Every time she lowered her head in embarrassment, Ethan exchanged knowing looks with the others, enjoying the sense of control. Watching this made my hands tremble so badly I had to clench them into fists. In my last life, I had rushed into scenes like this, dragging her away, begging her to wake up, destroying myself in the process. This time, I stayed rooted in place, burned the image into my memory, then turned around and walked out before my resolve cracked. Outside, the night air felt cold against my skin. I borrowed a phone and called Chloe again and again until she finally answered, irritation heavy in her voice. I demanded to know where she was and why she hadn't come home. I told her our father had nearly died because of her disappearance. For a brief moment, the noise on her end softened, and I knew she had stepped away from the bar. I could picture her clearly without seeing her squatting by the roadside, picking at grass, the way she always did when she felt conflicted. Her voice was calm, almost detached, as she said that almost died meant he was still alive, didn't it? She said she was doing fine, and had no intention of coming home. That was when I asked the question I had swallowed my entire previous life. I asked her why. Why she could abandon the people who loved her most. Why she could throw away her education, her future, everything our parents had worked for. Her answer came out sharp and bitter. She said she hated being the good girl, hated being praised for obedience instead of happiness. She hated studying, hated living a life where every step felt planned out. She said there were many paths in life, and she had chosen the fastest one. Ethan, in her mind, was a shortcut to money, freedom, and recognition. Then her tone softened, and she asked for help. She admitted she had taken the bank card but said it was frozen. Could I send her some money? Just enough to get by. She promised she would pay me back many times over once she succeeded. I hung up without answering. Standing there in the dark, I finally understood that the sister I loved no longer existed. When I told my parents everything, the house didn't explode the way it had in my previous life, it slowly collapsed instead. My mother cried until she couldn't catch her breath, repeating the same question over and over. How could her daughter do this? How could she be so cruel? My father sat silently, staring at the floor, his shoulders slumped as if the weight of the truth had finally crushed him. Still, they couldn't let Chloe go. Late that night, they went to the bar themselves, standing outside for hours, hoping she would come out willingly. When I arrived, I saw them surrounded by a group of young men, laughing and pointing, mocking my parents for being old-fashioned and embarrassing. Someone told my father that if he couldn't control his daughter, he should stop making a scene. Another man sneered and asked why he was so desperate, when he still had another child to take care of him in old age. Chloe stood a few steps away, half hidden behind the crowd, watching her parents be humiliated without stepping forward. Something inside me snapped. I pushed through the crowd and slapped her hard, twice, the sound cutting through the noise. She fell to the ground in shock, staring up at me as if she didn't recognize me anymore. Ethan rushed over and shoved me, shouting that I was crazy. I looked at his face and felt nothing but cold disgust. In my previous life, this was the man who smiled while ruining me. This time, I calmly took out my phone and called the police, reporting that my underage sister was being held and prevented from leaving. The mood shifted instantly. The crowd scattered the moment sirens appeared. Chloe screamed at me, Ethan glared like he wanted revenge, but it didn't matter. We took her home by force. The ride back was suffocating. My parents lectured her, then pleaded, then begged. They promised they wouldn't stop her from dating once she finished her exams, that they only wanted her safe. Chloe stared out the window the entire time, her jaw clenched, resentment burning in her eyes. That night, when the police called to say Ethan and several others had been detained for questioning, Chloe exploded. She screamed that we were ruining her life, that we were destroying her happiness, that she loved him, and had the right to choose. When I mentioned our father's heart attack, she said the words that finally broke him. She said if he died, that was his fate, not her responsibility. The room went silent. My mother froze. My father slowly sat down on the couch, as if every ounce of strength had drained out of him. When Chloe stormed out of the house in thin clothes, my mother tried to stop her. My father raised his hand and stopped her instead. Let her go, he said quietly. In that moment, I knew something inside him had completely shut off. After that, I stepped in fully. I sent my parents on a trip to get them away from the house, and the constant reminders of what we had lost. Then I hired a woman named Lana, confident, observant, and very good at understanding men like Ethan. I wanted Chloe to see the truth with her own eyes, not hear it filtered through family arguments. Within days, Chloe started calling me again, asking for money, her tone swinging between anger and desperation. I refused every time. Soon after, her classmates contacted me, saying she had borrowed money from all of them and vanished. I gave them Ethan's contact information instead. Meanwhile, Lana worked quickly. A few days later, I went to an upscale restaurant and sat close enough to hear everything. Ethan laughed loudly, enjoying the attention, bragging about his connections, basking in being admired. When Lana asked if he had a girlfriend, he scoffed and said Chloe was just a kid who followed the group around, nothing serious, nothing worth committing to. He called her a toy, something temporary. I recorded every word and sent it straight to my sister. Her messages flooded enrage, denial, panic, begging. I sent her the hotel room number where they were staying. An hour later, her screams echoed through the hallway as she confronted him. He struck her and dragged her inside, slamming the door behind him. She collapsed outside, crying, humiliated and broken, while strangers pretended not to see. I recorded it all. Even after that, she didn't leave him. That was when I finally accepted the truth. No matter what I did, she would cling to the life she chose, even if it destroyed her. After that night, I cut off all contact with Chloe completely. I had already crossed every line I once swore I never would, and I understood something very clearly now. Saving someone who didn't want to be saved only dragged everyone else down with them. Lana contacted me once more, telling me that despite everything, the humiliation, the recording, the slap in the hallway, Chloe and Ethan had somehow reconciled. They clung to each other desperately, like people afraid that letting go would mean admitting they had destroyed their own lives for nothing. I wasn't surprised. Chloe had already sacrificed her future, her family, her pride. Walking away would have meant accepting she was wrong, and she had never been able to face that. I told Lana to stop. From that moment on, Chloe's suffering would no longer be interrupted by my hand. Still, there was one last thing I needed to do, not for revenge, but to tear away the final illusion Chloe was living inside. Through contacts I had built quietly at work, I reached out to the legal wife of the powerful man Ethan was connected to. I sent her everything, the recordings, the hotel footage, the proof of how Ethan lived and how he treated women. I added a short message, carefully worded, suggesting that the son he kept hidden had inherited the same habits that once embarrassed their family. She called me herself. Her voice was calm, sharp, and intelligent. She asked me what I wanted. I told her the truth, that I didn't want money or protection, only for Ethan to lose the false status he used to manipulate others. She laughed softly and told me I was far more clear-headed than most adults she knew. A week later, Chloe appeared at our door in the middle of the night. She looked nothing like the girl who once shared my room. Her cheeks were hollow, her eyes swollen, her clothes wrinkled and dirty. The moment she saw us, she collapsed to her knees and begged for help, her voice cracking as she said Ethan had been attacked. She said someone had thrown a bag over his head, beaten him until his legs were shattered, and left him in the street. He needed surgery. He needed money. He had no one else. I pretended to be shocked and asked why a wealthy heir didn't have the money for his own treatment. That was when she broke down completely and admitted the truth, that Ethan had never been accepted by his family, that he had no inheritance, no safety net, nothing. As she spoke, my parents stepped out from behind me. My father's face was calm in a way that frightened me more than anger ever could. He told her to go back to the men she had chosen, and that from that moment on, they no longer had a daughter like her. Chloe screamed and cried, grabbing at my mother's legs, until she finally revealed the last card she had to play. She said she was pregnant. My father snapped. He threw a glass at the television and pulled out a bank card, tossing it at her feet. There was money on it enough to sever the last tie between us. He told her to take it and never come back, that if she died, she was not to die at our door. Chloe picked up the card and ran, not once turning back. I went to the hospital out of a mix of curiosity and unfinished emotion. Ethan lay in bed, his legs wrapped and immobilized, his future permanently altered. He would never walk normally again. His powerful family had completely cut him off, erasing him, as if he had never existed. On the day he was discharged, I watched from a distance as Chloe struggled to push his wheelchair through the cold. She looked painfully thin, her movements slow, one hand pressed against her stomach. Ethan shouted at her to hurry up, cursed the cold, blamed her for everything that had happened. He grabbed her hair and yanked her head back, screaming that his father had disowned him because of her, that his legs were ruined, that no other woman would ever want him now, and that she was stuck with him for life. Chloe cried quietly, her shoulders shaking. For a brief second, our eyes met across the parking lot. Her lips moved as if she were calling my name, begging without sound. I put on my sunglasses, rolled up my window, and drove away. A month later, I encountered Ethan again in a parking garage. He was waiting near my car, hiding poorly, gripping a wooden club with trembling hands. The fear from my previous life sharpened my reflexes. When he swung, I dodged easily. He screamed that I had ruined his life, that I was the one who exposed him to his family, that Chloe wouldn't leave him alone, and none of this was his fault. I smiled and told him I had done it on purpose. He lunged again, slow and unbalanced. I disarmed him and broke his arm with the same club he had raised against me. I crushed his hand beneath my foot and told him it was for hitting Chloe, though deep down, it was for everything he had done to me before. I glanced up at the security camera and told him to report it if he wanted. It was self-defense. Soon after, I transferred to another city. Before I left, I heard that Chloe had sold her apartment to pay for Ethan's medical bills, and that they were living in a cold, windowless garage. I saw her once, heavily pregnant, digging through trash cans while former classmates shouted at her for the money she owed them. She didn't look up. Or maybe she did and chose not to see me. A year later, my parents were finally smiling again. At a celebration dinner, a colleague showed me a news clip. A young woman had just turned 18, and stabbed her boyfriend repeatedly while he slept. Afterward, she smothered her newborn baby. The footage was blurred, but I recognized her instantly. My colleague remarked that the criminal's name sounded familiar. I smiled, looked away, and said it was just a coincidence. That night, I went home and brought my parents their favorite food. In this life, I had kept them alive. That was enough.